Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani, and today's video is going to be on gluten sensitivity. Kind of going to give you the gluten sensitivity 101, the breakdown of the genetic profile to figure out if you have a potential problem with gluten. Again, gluten sensitivity is kind of one of these controversial terms in the natural or functional medicine world. Conventional medicine is very familiar with celiac disease. And again, the literature shows about 1% of the population has celiac disease. And gluten sensitivity is one of these things where some people say 10%, others say up to 90 to 95%. So it's probably somewhere in between, but I know all of my patients do better cutting gluten out of their diet. I'm very rare to find one person that does not do better. We're going to go over gluten sensitivity and why some of these things, why there's always an improvement for the most part. So let's break it down here. According to the Journal of Pediatrics in 2002, gluten sensitivity is considered to be a heightened immunologic state regarding the genes interacting with gluten. And again, whether or not you're sensitive to gluten, if you have the genes, it's just a matter of the right environmental stressors. That could be poor sleep, stress, adrenal stress, blood sugar issues, low vitamin D, work stress, maybe sitting all day. The environmental stressors compounding on the DNA, and that DNA could then express itself and finally turn on, right? The epigenetic triggers, these are basically the marionettes, right, that control the puppets. So you have, the puppets are like the genes, and the environmental stressors are what's pulling the marionette. So you know the puppet moves because the marionette moves. So if we're inducing stress, physical, chemical, or emotional, the top of the marionette will move and the puppet will then move as well. So again, we have to look a little bit deeper, and there's some really cool testing that we can actually look at the genetics. I'm not a big fan of doing a lot of testing for gluten. I'm going to be straightforward with that. The reason why is because so many patients improve on an elimination provocation diet, or even just eliminating it, forget adding it back in, but just cutting gluten out of their diet, they do so well. Most of the time they feel, hey, they're already sold. They don't need to spend the $400 or $500 to get tested. But again, some people really want to test and actually look at it and see. So this is the test that I recommend. So we have to look at gluten sensitivity. We're looking at the human leukocyte antigen. This is the HLA-DQ. So we're looking at specific alleles. And you're getting one allele from your mom and one allele from your dad. Really important. So we have 9 specific alleles that we're looking at in this situation. HLA-DQ 1, 2, 3 through 9. And the celiac genes are going to be the 2. I'm going to make a little star on it. And the 8. So you can see here, really simple, 2 is by itself. 3 is actually a subtype of 8. So if you have 3, 7, or 9, you would kind of be right in that same camp though, all right? Because 3 is these are all the subtypes, but the real subtype here for celiac is 2 and 8. And according to Ken Fine over at Intero Labs, he finds that 35 to 40% of the population actually has these 2 and 8 genotypes. So 2 and 8, really nasty. This is the celiac disease genotype, and you only have to have one of those copies. And according to research, about 90 to 95% of celiac patients actually have at least one copy of the 2 and 8. So that's celiac disease. And let's compare real quick. Celiac disease is an enteropathy. It's disease of the gut. And essentially we're looking at specific markers to diagnose celiac disease. We're looking at potential anti-gliadin antibodies. We may see endomysial antibodies, anti-transglutaminase antibodies. We may see increased intraepithelial lymphocytes, and we may even see villous atrophy by 80% via a scope sample. So again, all these different antibodies are nothing more than just measurements of tissue destruction. Endomysial, transglutaminase, all of these different things are in the gut. It's the gut lining, that small intestine, the microvilli, right? Here are the little finger-like projections that absorb nutrition. They're shrinking, they're atrophying, and once they atrophy 80%, that's where the celiac diagnosis comes in. So if we don't have one of these transglutaminase, endomysial, increased intraepithelial lymphocytes, or the villous atrophy, then we're kind of stuck. We're in no man's land. So the next thing we're looking at is gluten sensitivity. That's where the genetics are there. We may not have the same type of destruction in the gut. We may have other types of inflammation that's happening. And we may see that with genotype 1. I'll use a different color here just to differentiate it. We're going to see it with 1, and we're going to see it with 3. And then you can see here that 5 and 6 is also a subtype of 1, and 7, 8, and 9 is also a subtype of 3. So really simple there, 1 and 3. Now just to look a little bit deeper at the same time, 1 also has a subtype. It has an alpha 1 and a beta 1. This is really important because a lot of labs don't look for the alpha and beta 1. Those are extra genotypes that need to be ruled out if you want to truly rule out whether or not you have gluten sensitivity. Now, here's where it all comes down, right? The only genotype, according to research, and the research it's kind of, up in the air. There isn't a lot of solid research on this. But again, it takes typically 10 or 20 years, maybe even longer, for the research to get their head around this. So in the interim, I think it's solid enough where if you get one of these tests back and you get a 2, 8, 1, or 3, or alpha or beta, or if you get any of these subtypes in there, you should cut gluten out. It's just not worth it. Again, the only genotype right now that says that you are fine having gluten is 4. That's the only one, and that's about 1 to 2% of the population are in this area, about 1% and change. Now, I'll have to do another video on this, probably a part 2 of this, of even if you were a 4, for instance, why you still don't want to have gluten. But that's another video. I'll probably follow up right after this series with that. But again, celiac genes are going to be the 2 and the 8. And again, you can see 3 is still the umbrella of the 8. The gluten sensitivity genotypes are going to be the 1 and the 3, as well as the alpha 1 and the beta 1. So again, if you have the genes, whether you're gluten sensitive or celiac, if you have those genes, especially if you're celiac, you cannot touch gluten. If you're gluten sensitive and you have the genes, the 1, 3, the alpha 1, beta 1, you got to be very careful. If you have any stressors in your life, you could be mounting an immune response to gluten. And that's really the key thing. When we mount that immune response, what's happening is we're developing leaky gut. And how we're developing leaky gut is through the stimulation of zonulin. When we have this type of genotype, one of the things that we're seeing is high level of zonulin secretion. And zonulin's this peptide that basically unzips the gut lining. So I've given this analogy to patients all the time that come to my office. If our fingers together are a healthy gut lining, so this is the inside of our gut, this is where food is, for instance. Well, when we eat gluten and we activate these genes that are there, well, we stimulate the zonulin production, and that causes the unzipping of these tight junctions and allow undigested, the literature calls it antigens, just think of it as food particles, right? Undigested antigens into the bloodstream, and now the immune system starts attacking it, and eventually we lose self-tolerance. The body no longer has the ability to differentiate invader and self. It looks at its own tissue as potentially being an invader, and that's where autoimmune conditions come in. And celiac disease is one branch of autoimmunity. It's autoimmunity in the small intestine, in the gut. The difference with gluten sensitivity is there's about 140 other autoimmune conditions, and gluten sensitivity, due to this unzipping, due to this zonulin and leaky gut mechanism, we're going to be driving other autoimmune conditions. Again, I have Hashimoto's, and I have the genotypes for gluten sensitivity, so I have to be very careful. So, I mean, let's say I didn't have celiac disease, which I don't, but I'm still sensitive, and if I am eating a whole bunch of gluten and not managing stress and have selenium deficiency and adrenal issues and sleep stuff, I can manufacture higher levels of antibodies to my thyroid tissue. Again, not good. I want to be healthy. So I cut all grains out from my diet due to the cross reaction. I've talked about this in other videos. Other proteins look very similar to gluten, not just wheat, barley, rye, and potentially cross-contaminated oats. So you really want to dig a little bit deeper there. The underlying mechanism is when you have these genes and you eat glutens, right? In my opinion, all grains, you're unzipping your gut lining due to the zonulin stimulation, and then all the food particles are going into the bloodstream, and our immune system is losing self-tolerance. It doesn't know, who's the invader or who belongs in the house, so to speak. So again, if you have a gut issue, there are a lot more things that interplay with this. Chronic infections can interplay. Another mechanism that gluten is driving is dysbiosis. Studies show that when people cut gluten out, whether you're sensitive or not, the gut bacteria, the bad bacteria drops and the good bacteria rises. So there's other arguments about cutting out gluten, not just from a genetic autoimmune leaky gut mechanism, but more from a dysbiosis mechanism as well. And I'll have to explore this in deeper videos. But if you have gut issues and you're trying to get over that issue and trying to heal, again, feel free and reach out below or click on screen to get a hold of me. Also subscribe so you get access to more of my videos, trying to put more cutting edge information, actionable information into everyone's hands. So thanks a lot and have a great day.